we can't afford to keep working on cases we aren't getting paid for. So how do we start to develop a better plan to make sure that the staff is spending their time in the places that make financial sense and ethically are aligned with the rules we gotta comply with? Because if you don't make that change, what you could unfortunately run into is that your team is working really hard, but the firm doesn't have that much money because we aren't putting our time in the right places. So now that tax season is over, it's time for you to start thinking about planning. See, a lot of law firms struggle with this because every single year when tax season comes around, it's like a mad dash to try to figure out, okay, all right, what's going on with our financials? Let's get our financials over to our tax accountant. And sometimes you're surprised when you realize that, hey, you owe more taxes than you thought you were going to have to pay. Or some people are just figuring out for the first time whether or not they were profitable in their firm. And so here's the thing that I recommend for a lot of law firms is don't wait until the tax deadline to really start digging into your financials. One of the things that you should probably do is work with your bookkeeper to set up a monthly cadence on getting your financial information, because you want to be able to look at your financial results on a monthly basis to understand, like, hey, what is going on in my business? Like, are we profitable? Yes or no? Did we make money? Like, what was our revenue? And hey, what are our expenses? Are there any opportunities to make some improvements? And those are the types of things and conversations you should be having on a regular basis. And the way that you go about having those conversations is having a bookkeeping process. Whether you do that internally or whether you hire an outside company to do the bookkeeping, you want to make sure that you have a process for getting that done. Now, we do a lot of bookkeeping for clients, and a lot of times what I find is that most law firms don't really look at those numbers at all. But what I will say, when you're working with a bookkeeper who understands law firms, they will be able to give you the reports in a way that is understandable to you. Because yes, you do not need to focus on every single number in your financial statements, because there's a lot of information there and there's a lot of stuff to go through. But what you want to do instead is you want to focus on what are the key numbers that I need to pay attention to that kind of give me an idea on, hey, what's going on in our business? Which is why I usually recommend for people, let's start with from the top down. So when we're looking at your profit and loss, the first thing we want to understand is, what was your revenue? Like, how much money did you bring into the firm? Now, you want to compare that to, if you know your number, from how much money did you earn? Because those two numbers might be different. See, the money that you actually brought into the firm this is the legal work that we've done. We've billed the client, and the client has actually paid their invoice. Either they had the money in trust or they paid the invoice when you sent it to them. The next side of that is really, how much legal work did we actually perform during the month? Because what a lot of law firms become surprised of is not all the legal work that you did actually showed up on the invoice. So you want to understand what is the difference between those numbers. And then not only that is, you want to make sure that people are actually paying their invoices. I mean, time and time again, I meet with different law firms and we'll go into their law practice management system, and I'll pull what you call an unpaid invoice report. We pull the unpaid invoice report, and a lot of times they're pretty shocked at what that number is. Like, I was meeting with one firm once, and we looked at, and I asked them a question. It's like, hey, how are you doing? What's your process around, collecting unpaid invoices? They're like, oh, we have a trust account. We don't really have that issue. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, let's go into your system. We pulled the report, and they had about $900,000 that were unpaid invoices. And I said, hey, what's going on with this case? Is this case still active? They're like, yeah, I worked on that case last week. Well, what about this case? What about this case? And we went down the list, and what they did not realize is that not all the invoices were getting paid. So you want to make sure that you understand that difference of, hey, how much money did we bring in? Like, what did we collect? And then we want to look at, okay, all right, what is the work that we actually done, like the legal work that we actually performed? And did we collect for the work that we did. The next thing that I like to look at is I like to look at your employee costs, because a good rule of thumb is when we look at how much your legal staff costs, like the people who are actually doing the legal work, if you take the cost of that team and you multiply it by 3, I want to know, is your revenue at least 3 times more than what your legal staff costs? Because that good rule of thumb kind of gives you a very quick measure to help you understand, like, okay, all right, is the legal team producing the right or an adequate level of revenue to support all the other functions and all the other expenses that you have with your business? Because if your legal team isn't producing enough revenue for your firm, you're probably going to start seeing some challenges in other areas, or maybe you got to start taking out loans, or maybe you got to start running up a balance on the credit card. And a lot of times you can kind of tell by looking at that quick number of just saying, if I take what I am paying my legal staff and I multiply that number by 3, what is that going, is my revenue going to be at least 3 times what it costs me to pay my legal staff? If not, maybe we got some opportunities there. Maybe we need to look a little bit deeper and say, hey, if the team is only producing 2 times what they cost, then let's ask the question, do they have enough legal work? And if they have enough legal work, it's just like, hey, are they spending their time on the cases properly? Are they spending their time on the cases that we're able to get paid on? Because that is another thing I see for a lot of firms, is that the legal team may be doing all the casework, but if the legal team is spending a lot of time on cases that you are not able to collect on, you need to really look and say, okay, all right, how do we really reprioritize where we're spending our time? Now, you want to keep in mind whatever the rules are for your state bar association, whatever the ethical rules are around you being able to adjust how you're working on cases. You do want to keep the ethics in mind. But what you want to start doing from a business perspective is really asking yourself, it's like, hey, we can't afford to keep working on cases we aren't getting paid for. So how do we start to develop a better plan to make sure that the staff is spending their time in the places that make financial sense and ethically are aligned with the rules we got to comply with? Because if you don't make that change, what you could unfortunately run into is that your team is working really, really, really hard, but the firm doesn't have that much money because we aren't putting our time in the right places. Now, the next area I like to look at comes down to the marketing spend, because in the marketing area, I want to understand, it's like, all right, how much are we spending on marketing? And if I take whatever our marketing number is, let's say hypothetically, we're spending $10,000 a month on marketing. The next question I want to ask is, how much revenue is that marketing actually generating? And this is where we start to look a little bit deeper into things like, okay, like how many leads are coming in? Like if we look and see, all right, you have, you spent $10,000 and you had 50 leads come in. Okay. And then I want to see how many of those leads turned into consults, and then how many of those consults turned into clients. And if we kind of look and we do some estimates, like all the people who went from leads, the consults to clients, about how much money do we think that those cases are going to be worth? Because if we compare that number to the $10,000 you had to spend to get these new clients, the question I want to ask is, was it worth it? Like, did the money in the marketing get spent wisely? Did we attract the right people that we need to be bringing into the firm? Because if we did not attract the right types of clients that we need to bring into the firm, the question then is, hey, what changes do we need to make in our marketing strategy to make sure that we are attracting the right people in the firm that we need to be supporting and working with? So when you look at those 3 numbers, I would say that is a great place for you to start. Now, of course, there are other numbers that you can really look at, but I think if you've never really sat down and really done a deeper look at your financials, those are 3 great places you can start, is looking at your revenue, is understanding how much money do we have coming in, compare that to how much legal work have you actually done to make sure that you're actually collecting on the legal work that you're doing. The next thing you want to look at is your employee costs. And then if you take your legal staff, what the legal staff costs, multiply that number by 3, and then ask yourself, is our revenue number at least 3 times what our legal staff costs? And then the third thing you want to look at is your marketing spend. And you want to kind of start asking yourself, is the marketing actually generating the type of clientele that we need? Like, is it generating enough money for us to justify continuing to spend on it? Now, if you want a quick rule of thumb when it comes down to marketing, what I would say is take your marketing number, multiply it by 10, and then ask yourself, okay, is our revenue about 10 times more than what our marketing is? Because your marketing should be bringing you in enough clients or enough valuable clients for you to be able to say, hey, our marketing produces a 10 times multiple. So yes, we are spending our marketing dollars effectively, meaning we have enough money coming in to fund these key areas of our business. And once you get through those 3 areas, then I would say, set up a meeting with your bookkeeper, or if your bookkeeper doesn't have the skill set, maybe it's time for you to start working with a CFO, and maybe working with a CFO on a fractional basis to really help you dig into understanding your numbers, and also look at forecasting and looking into the future to understand, like, hey, what decisions can we make today to better prepare us for where we want to go tomorrow? Hey, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.